Harrison Price for Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic, iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. Turned game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall. Call the hotel, 604-331-1000. Mention Sick Harrison Price and our rates. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sick Harrison alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you today, and we'll start with the Canucks in Anaheim, looking for a second consecutive victory on this California road trip. We'll start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What has more of your attention tonight, Canucks versus Ducks or the U.S. election? You can vote. Vote. At our X and YouTube channels.
It's right there for you.
Apparently a lot of Americans voting today. Word of record turnout. And let's face it, a pretty big election. The election is winning the poll question through 8,900 votes, and I'm not really surprised, given the stakes, given the theater, given the potential for a very, very slim margin of victory. So I voted election. The good news here is you're going to start seeing results around 4 p.m. our time. So you got like multiple hours of results here before the Canucks and Ducks face off. You also have a lot of those swing states because a lot of them are on Eastern time, Georgia and North Carolina in particular.
I honestly don't think
you may have a pretty good idea by 7 o'clock, but it could be clear as mud.
I think it'd be clear as mud. I honestly don't think you're going to start to see any bold predictions until 10 p.m. Pacific, at which point the Canucks and Ducks are well over.
Yeah. And, of course, the U.S. networks should have learned their lesson 24 years ago about early predictions, if you're old enough to remember Bush v. Gore and that business in Florida. I have a lot of people, look, so I'm going to be watching results. Canucks and Ducks come on. I'll be watching some of that. But if it's super tight, I might actually be recording the Canucks and Ducks and watching it a little later.
For the first time ever. I've got a patio TV that I put on a stand. Mm-hmm. I might bring it in. I might go dual monitor.
So
I've never been a dual monitor guy, but I might.
It's funny you mention that because I've got people in my comments saying, are you not a dual screen guy? For whatever reason, I have not been a dual screen guy. Mm-hmm. I can't really explain why other than just the cumbersome nature. I suppose I do like to sort of focus my attention. And you know, we're talking dual screens. Of course, we're normally talking multiple games going on. Even in the NFL now, I used to be flipping around. You know, I sort of like to focus on one game. Maybe I'm just getting old in my attention span, but I sort of like to focus on one game, and I'll flip around on the commercials, but I usually want to come back to my main area of focus. So I think my plan here is to watch results, tune in for Canucks Ducks. If it starts to get really close in the election, I may have to just DVR and watch the Canucks and Ducks.
See, the problem is
after I'm satisfied or until I'm sick and tired.
The election isn't really a visual medium. Like, you need to hear what they're saying for the election coverage. And yet for us, now for a casual fan, they can probably just watch the Canucks without sound. For us, you know, we like to know everything that's going on in the game. It's probably pretty imperative for us to have sound on for the game. So what do you do with sound if you are a dual monitor?
Yeah, so
you know, like,
it's funny because you're right. You can sort of follow just the graphics of the election and kind of know what's going on.
Maybe,
right?
but you're
going to flash to screens, updating screens, and all that.
I think it's better with sound, though. It's better with sound. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Maybe you have an earbud connected to one of the TVs so that can sort of, I don't know. I don't have a Bluetooth.
I'm surprised you're not a multi-screen guy because you're such a technology adopter. Explain yourself.
Just like I'm not going to be allowed to put 2 TVs in a room. So, like, what are the circumstances that allows this? I mean, I have done like a laptop being on, but does that really count? Does that count as dual screens if you've got a laptop going playing a game?
I believe that counts.
Is it? Okay. I have done that before. I think this time I'm actually going to legitimately have 2 TVs going, which, kind of excited about, actually.
Mm-hmm. Preparing
dinner and having 2 things going.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, 56-43 right now the poll is, right, or 56-44 the poll's running for the U.S. election.
Yeah.
And, of course, some people are interested for the decision, some people are interested for the politics of it all, and some people are interested because of the anarchy.
Chaos.
And chaos that could come from it. Surrey Mitsubishi and our friends there, the 2024 models, last chance to take advantage of specials here. When you trade in any vehicle on a 2024, on a new 2024, Surrey Mitsubishi going to give you $3,000 above market value for your trade. Take advantage of rates as low as 1.9%. You get the extended warranty on the 2024 PHEV. That's what I'm driving. That's what Blake's driving. We absolutely love it. Plus $1,000 credit towards winter tires only while inventory lasts, only at Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. Our top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Aatu Räty called up to play fourth line center. Archdeep Baines of Surrey sent down to the Abbotsford Canucks after Rick Tocchet practices with Baines in the middle yesterday, but goes on to say, look, he is not a center iceman, not fair to him. We're not going to play him there. So Räty gets the call, in part because Pius Suter, well, not in part, principally because Pius Suter is going to play left wing with Elias Pettersson and Conor Garland again. That was a change made late Saturday in the San Jose game. It produced terrific results for the Canucks. A couple goals for Suter, including the winner. Some terrific chemistry on the game-winning goal between those 3. So Räty going to play his 4th NHL game this season. Started the season with the Canucks, played three games, had 1 assist, played 9 minutes and 41 seconds per contest. This from Dave Hall of Canucks Army, who we've had on the show before and will again. Räty has been eating minutes down in Abbey. He leads the team in points, plays top line, top power play, top penalty kill, all while dominating the faceoff circle. As much as the farm needs his services, it was time. And yeah, his ability to flip his hand over and take faceoffs as though he was a right shot, is very appealing to the Vancouver Canucks because they do not have any natural right shot.
Dave says that when he's watching Räty with the Abbey Canucks, every time, and these are his words, every time Ratu's going over the boards, you know that Aatu Raty's on the ice. Like, Räty has reached that level in his American League games that he's close to the best player on the ice almost on every shift. Not a productive shift necessarily every single time, obviously. Not leading the league in scoring. But he's leading his team in scoring, and he's that noticeable. And again, he's 21. So I don't want to get you overly excited about Aatu Räty, but I think you can be excited about Aatu Räty. This is a different player than even upon acquisition in the Bo Horvat trade. This is a guy that has developed. And again, he feels like an older prospect. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face here. He feels like an older prospect because he's been in the league. He's been around the league for so long. He is 21. And that's an exciting review of Aatu Räty. So, again, you have to have patience. But here's the other thing I like about it. In the morning skate, he's out there with Daniel Sprong and Nils Höglander. For what Aatu Räty brings to the table, Matt, that is structured for success. Like that, he can do something with those two guys.
Well, that could be a terrific fourth line.
It could be really good.
That could be one of the best fourth lines in hockey if Räty establishes himself as an NHL player. A few things here by way of context. First of all, he turns 22 next week.
Yeah.
He has played NHL games in each of the last 3 seasons. He played 12 games for the New York Islanders in 22-23, scored a couple goals, actually, before getting the 3-game cameo with the Canucks last year and the 3 games at the beginning of this season previously mentioned. He's the second-round pick, 52nd overall in the 2021 draft. What that doesn't tell you is that when he was 16 years old, 16, 17, maybe closer to 16, he was tracking towards being one of the top players selected in that draft. Now, he didn't have a good finish in the lead up to the draft. That knocked him down to the second round. But on talent alone, and also talking about a bigger guy too, like he's a 6'2" guy. Like this is by no means a player who gives away much in the size department. So in terms of talent and tools, this was a guy who was amongst the most complete or amongst the most tooled up in that 2021 NHL draft class. So, for many observers, it's not a surprise that he's playing NHL games. It's not a surprise that he looks like he could be a 22-year-old who makes it in the National Hockey League. That's my question for you, partner. Do you think this is for good? As it stands right now, what would be a bigger surprise to you? Him staying with the Canucks and just becoming an NHL player, or him getting sent back down at some point as the season goes along?
Because of the age stuff that we talked about, and there's cap considerations to be made here, and he can go up and down with impunity still. So, no, will he touch ground in Abbey the rest of the season? Yeah, I think he will, just because of all that. But if you told me that he played 2/3 of the rest of the season with Vancouver, I could believe that too. So I think what he wants to see is a progression of game in the games played column. I think he's going to see that. I think we're going to see, maybe by the time all is said and done, maybe an even split of games played, maybe even slightly more NHL games than AHL games, and that will be a success story for this player.
Just for a moment, and we've outlined this a few times here, but the Canucks in pretty good standing after 10 games. Got a very winnable game tonight in Anaheim. We'll get to some of the details in a moment. But doing all this without a Vezina finalist goaltender, with very little in production from their $11.6 million man, Elias Pettersson, with very little in production from their huge free agent signing in Jake DeBrusk, and with the potential of having a good young centerman in Aatu Räty and a good young goal-scoring winger in Jonathan Lehteramäki on the come here before the midpoint of the season. If you are bullish on the Vancouver Canucks, you are not alone. There are a lot of good things tracking with this team right now, including some of the contributions that they're getting from the other additions this offseason. First and foremost, Kevin Lankinen, of course. You have to feel exceptional about their goaltending when Demko returns, and Dreger telling us he's intends to practice with his teammates this week.
It's happening as we speak. He's out there right now.
Brilliant.
Taking shots from his teammates. That took all of 24 hours to come true.
Yep.
Well done, Darren Dreger.
And well done, Kevin Lankinen, and well done, Kiefer Sherwood, who has been outstanding for this club. Heinen's played his role. You look at some of the guys, like a guy they brought back, you're looking at Teddy Bluger going, boy, he had a really good season last year for Teddy Bluger. Can he do it again? He has been awesome for them as well. Daniel Sprong has had his moments. Hasn't played every game, but has had his moments. We know he can turn on a dime. They even got Nils Oman down on the farm and through waivers. Boy, there's a lot of things tracking Vancouver Canucks these days.
There's ceiling available to them, right? Which is what you want. What you don't want is to be hitting on all cylinders. Everything's going your way, and you're at 500. That's sort of what's going on with teams like the Flames and such. Like everything that they need to happen is sort of happening, and they're still barely keeping their head above water. Canucks are really not doing a whole lot right, based on expectation. And here they are, 3 games above 500, 2 losses in their opening 10 games. So there's a lot.
2 regulation losses.
2 regulation losses. But again, if your losses are in the third column over, you're going to do just fine. And that's what it sort of feels like, is that those single point losses, they get ingested by the humans as a loss. Like most of those single point losses for the Canucks players, they felt like losses. And so it affects the human psyche in the same way.
Certainly the opening night against Calgary where you blew a 4-1 lead.
So you've got a point, but yet you're doing all the things to recover from a loss, which is great. That's what you want. You want lessons learned. You want guys reevaluating what went wrong tonight. But you got a point versus the other option, which is, of course, getting no points and having to deal with all that. So it's the Canucks are in a good spot. Again, presuming this is a mediocre 10 games for them, presuming this is amongst their worst 10-game stretches of the year, then they're in a really good spot.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to?
Lots to report on that front from the fine folks at Neighborhood and Yellow Dog. Have we talked about the porter ale? Have we talked about the smoked porter, the shake a paw? Been a couple years since this brew's graced our laps, so welcome back to the Shake a Paw Smoked Porter. Well balanced, gives you hints of rich chocolate and coffee flavors, and an underlying subtle smokiness. Enjoy it with friends and canine alike.
I want to get to Pius Suter here, the hero from Saturday's victory against the San Jose Sharks. He scored a couple of goals, and it's already been a bit of a roller coaster for Pius Suter. You might remember he came to camp. Well, let's rewind a little bit. Last year, they brought him in to be third-line center, and he did for the most part. And then he found himself playing left wing, remember, with J.C. Miller and Brock Besser. And then he comes to camp this year, and coach says, I really like Suter in the middle. We're going to get back to having him in the middle. We need him in the middle. And you'll hear from the clip here from Coach talking in a second. He still hasn't totally abandoned that. It's almost like he feels he needs to message to Pius Suter. And no, I still see you as a centerman. You see this a lot with centermen, right? It's kind of defining for them, identifying for them. It's like when you move a shortstop to second base, typically they're like, oh, I can't play second.
Less responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Used to be the guy in the infield. Now I'm on the So he starts him at center this year, and sure enough, through the natural flow of who's going, who's not going, let's shake up the lines a little bit. Suter finds himself playing left wing with Elias Pettersson and Conor Garland. So similar billing as to last year, where you're playing with good offensive players on one of the top 2 lines and in the top 6, just you're not playing center. Here's Coach talking about what he likes from Pius Suter and what he's bringing to that Pettersson-Garland line.
Yeah, I would say hockey IQ. I think that's one thing that he's really good at. Like there's, what he makes up for, whatever. He knows that he's not the fastest player out there, but when you have a brain like that, you can make up for that. And I think that's where he's really good at. We got to get some guys going, some wingers going, obviously, but I just, think he's, especially the last week or so, he's, 10 days, I think he deserves more ice time. And, putting him on that line, obviously he comes up big for us. It's something that I'm going to have to do more often. So probably going to keep him on that line. I think he deserves it. But he's still a valuable guy as a centerman, too, for us.
Yeah, still valuable as a centerman.
Wow.
But so much of that is true. He is not fleet of foot. He's not a burner who's going to create separation, walk guys off the wing, at least not very often.
He's a smart player.
But it's the one thing that everybody said to us when he signed last summer, coming over from Chicago, that he's a bit of, and look, every Stanley Cup contender needs a utility club forward, right? We used to talk to Pierre Maguire about that, and he would tell us about, when Scotty Bowman would go through the elements of a championship team, that you want that utility club forward who can play in a lot of spots. So, yes, he does deserve more ice time, and there's more ice time available to him on this wing than there would be at center ice. He's missed one game this year, but he's got the he's missed. Has he missed the one game? Yeah,
Yeah.
he's missed the one game this year, but he's got the 4 goals.
Missed the opener.
Yeah, he missed the opener, but he's got the 4 goals and 5 points in 9 games. And I'll bring you back to the start of the season, partner, where he was my sleeper because for 2 reasons. Number one, all the work that the Canucks did on the wing this summer and improving that group, I felt like, he's got a chance where he could very well play with some very offensively inclined wingers, and maybe that will boost the point total. And the point total's been pretty consistent over Pius Suter's career. But also, if he did have to flip on over to the wing, then he's playing with some really good offensive players. So a lot going well right now for Suter.
He can be a bit Yannick Hansen-y in terms of his finish. He puts himself in great position, but like he's career-high 15 goals, I believe. Mm-hmm. Like he probably should have 20 under his belt at some point, but he doesn't finish on everything he's given. But he's certainly good enough. Tonight is interesting because if everything goes well, somebody that probably played well is going to come out of the lineup, it sounds like, because Rick Tocchet is insinuating that Dakota Joshua is ready to go on Thursday. So if that happens, if you're a winger in tonight's lineup, boy, you are bringing your very best to the table here because someone leaves the lineup tonight.
Yeah, and might that be Nils Höglander or Daniel Sprong, because they are the 2 wingers playing on the 4th line with Räty in the middle. Heinen and Sherwood are flanking Teddy Bluger. Suter and Sherwood with Suter and Garland with Elias Pettersson, and of course DeBrusk, Miller, and Besser.
Could be Suter returning to the middle.
Could be.
And Joshua getting a winger spot
with Räty coming out. The scratch, yeah.
Could be that.
Mm-hmm.
But again,
if this line is going again tonight, Blake, particularly because Elias showed life Saturday. And you need to get life, you need to get production, you need to get joy, enthusiasm, all the things that we've been talking about.
Smiles per
with
60.
With Elias Pettersson. And if Suter is helping you produce that, I think he is far more valuable as a caddy for Elias Pettersson than he is playing in a bottom 6 center role.
That's probably fair. I think ideally they do want eventually Joshua to play with Garland, as per our poll question yesterday, but I don't think it needs to happen off the hop.
In fact, I would be a little surprised if it does happen off the hop.
Yeah.
3 times 14 goals, once a 15-goal scorer, Pius Suter. As I mentioned, the consistency, 14 and 13 for 27 in 55 games with the Blackhawks. And let me correct myself. He came via the Detroit Red Wings, of course, not Chicago. 15, 21, 36. That's his high water mark as a pro, his second year in the league with Detroit. Then 14, 10, and 24 in his second tour with Detroit.
A couple of those are 20-goal paces. He just didn't get to the
Well,
games.
that's it. 14, 15, and 29 for the Canucks last year in 67 games. So his first season in the league was a 20-goal pace, and he was nearing that.
Yeah.
Last year with the Canucks. Needless to say, 4 goals in 9 games is more than 20-goal pace. Here's his line mate, Conor Garland, on what he likes about playing with Pius Suter.
He's easy to play with. So him and Dak have a lot of similarities. How smart they are. They go to the right areas. Not the fastest players, but just how they're in the right areas. They're above the pocket all the time, and then when they get their chances, they can bury it. So I love playing with Suits. Played with them a bunch last year, and they got hurt. So I think we'll be a good line together tomorrow.
And before we go crowning Pius Suter, we should also mention whomever is playing with Conor Garland these days is drawing pretty good real estate. You can make the case that he has been the Vancouver Canucks' best skater through 10 games. Blake, frankly, you can make that case over Quinn Hughes. And I know how great Hughes is, and I know we grade Hughes on a curve, and I know we take for granted a lot of the things that he does, but just being able to consider Conor Garland, a year and a month after a trade request from the Canucks, in terms of their best skaters and right there with Quinn Hughes, is quite a compliment to the Mighty Might on right wing.
He's been the kingmaker. He's been the best skater, I think, night to night. I mean, Quinn Hughes is right there with him, but I mean, those two, and neither one of them cresting 5'10", I don't think. And they are the heartbeats right now of the skating group. So it's a great little lesson in there, and I emphasis on little.
Well, I mean, Hughes may not crest, but Garland, there's just no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Oh, we can emphatically say it in his.
Whatever they list him at, subtract a couple of inches or just understand they're measuring him in skates. He is not a big guy, but he is having an outsized effect on this Vancouver Canucks season. So the Canucks in Anaheim tonight, where the Canucks have beaten the Ducks 5 straight times. We used to talk about parity in the National Hockey League, and it is true. Even some of the lower lights of the league can rise up and win a game and beat a better team. But boy, oh boy, have we seen some wretched teams in the NHL over multiple seasons, and Anaheim is squarely amongst that group. Nice collection of young talent. I do think the Ducks are going to be a force to be reckoned with in a couple of years. I think we're going to get back to those days, and Blake, you and I were doing the show in our early days or early years when you went into Anaheim, you better bring your A game, right? When they had Getzlaff and Perry and Niedermeyer.
I just used to wince at the shenanigans because I knew that Kessler was going to get out of his mind with Perry, and I was just like, I rued these games.
Yep.
And I knew that because there was two of them, because both Perry and Getzlaff were equally as annoying as Kessler was.
Yes.
But it was 2v1. So I knew they would win the mental warfare.
The scoundrel?
Yeah, the scoundrel warfare. So I just, oh God, I hated these games.
Yeah, no. Once upon a time, Canucks Ducks, that was a big boy game.
Yeah.
That was a fun game to watch, and usually atop the Pacific Division. Anaheim's going to get back there. I have no doubt. There's too many good young players there. I don't think this is Buffalo West, but we'll see. And here's the other thing: they have young offensive talent, but it's just not finding a way to put the biscuit in the basket.
Well, on the basics is another B word. The basics they don't have nailed down defensively either, right? So they don't have the learning lessons that Rick Tocchet's teaching. They haven't been taught those much. So
they're the lowest scoring team in the league right now with 24 goals in 11 games. They have scored more than 3 goals in a game just once, and that was a 5-4 overtime victory in Utah. They've also scored just 9 goals in their last 5 games with just 1 win in that span. And did we have the JPAT tweet up about their record versus the Canucks record?
Yeah, if you're thinking, this is going to be a blowout game, and I do think the Canucks are due for another 5 goals on the board. Like, when is it all going to come together? Remember all the multi-point games for the Canuck forwards at the beginning of last year? We haven't had many of those, right? If you're thinking tonight's the night, for whatever reason, after a prolonged stretch of pretty mediocre play, we're talking year over year for the Ducks, the Canucks really haven't been able to light them up at all.
3-2, 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, and 2-1. The last 5 Canucks victories.
Like effectively 1-goal games, 1 2-goal win. I mean,
but you would look at that and go, oh, they're playing like a Darryl Sutter team. A team that's probably outmatched offensively, but it's going to keep the score close. Well,
the good news is they're winning them, but they're not exactly lighting the lamp.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to do with the Anaheim goaltender, Luke Dostal. JPAT mentioned it yesterday. He has the best save percentage in the league right now amongst goaltenders with at least 5 starts or 5 games. .937. He looks to be making a case to leapfrog John Gibson and become the starting goaltender there. And this is a pretty good prospect as well. This is not a guy, and I know we're sometimes accustomed to NHL goaltenders kind of coming out of nowhere, that very few get drafted in their first round these days. And so somewhere between the 2nd and 7th round, a goaltender over a long development period, because let's remember, we usually takes 4, 5, 6 years to see some of these goalies after they're drafted. But Lukas Dostal was a pretty well-regarded goaltender coming out of the Czech Republic. Decent size there, not a giant by any stretch, but was a 3rd-round pick in 2018. has had cups of coffee over the last 3 seasons. Last year it was more than a cup of coffee. Played 44 games for the Ducks, and this year has already found his way into 9 games, rocking a 2.22 goals against, a .937 save percentage, and 4 wins for an Anaheim team that, let's face it, is not very good. So the Canucks running into one of the better young goaltenders in this to start this early season, and we'll see how they do there. Now,
we should mention it for sure is Lankinen. He has been announced as the starting goaltender, by the way. Just in case you were thinking they might squeeze in.
I tried to tell him and J-Pat last Friday, Archer Shilovs is not playing again for the Vancouver Canucks unless he gets to that home, unless he gets that back-to-back Chicago and Nashville a week from this Saturday, Sunday, and Thatcher Demko is not yet ready to come back. That's the next time Shilovs plays, because if you're Talkett right now, there has been a vast difference between your 2 goaltenders, an ocean, a Grand Canyon between your 2 goaltenders. You are not putting in the second guy unless you absolutely have to. So I see Lankinen playing the next 5 games. Easy. Anaheim and LA, Edmonton on Saturday, Calgary and the Islanders next week, and then we get to that Chicago-Nashville back-to-back, both games here at Rogers Arena.
And with the Demko news of today, too, I mean, you wonder if they're also saying, no, we can do it. We can do Lankinen right up until Demko's first start.
And frankly, Blake, I think that would be Talkett's preference.
Well, given the form, he's sure.
Yeah. You're early in the season. You don't want to bleed points. This isn't a development league. If you get to a point where you have significant margin on the playoff bar, then it might be a different story. But right now, you're fighting and scrapping and clawing your 3rd place in your division. You still have ground to gain. You have to play the goaltender that gives you the best chance to win, and that is far and away Kevin Lankinen. Derek Forbort, shaken up during a drill yesterday. He left practice favoring his leg. Harmon Dial on the scene doing the reporting. Do you have defense pairs there?
I don't.
Is Forbort?
It's, I believe, going to be Brandstrom Desharnais based on what we saw previously. So that would be my guess.
Yeah, and so yesterday, Coach Talkett had no update, wasn't sure what happened to Forbort, so we'll see if the big fella is going to need to miss any time, or if it's just simply going to be that he...
Been a heck of a year for
no, it really
Derek
has.
Forbort.
Poor Derek Forbort. Yeah. I mean, he loses his father, and then he comes back and plays, was it his 500 NHL games? Did he make 500? Mm-hmm. 500 or 400? Anyways, plays a milestone game in the National Hockey League. Now this happens to him. Yeah, it was 500, game number 500. He's played 4 games for the Canucks this year. I want to get back to something we discussed yesterday with Darren Dreger, who mentioned the availability of Bowen Byram. And I see Rick Dhaliwal has followed up and said this was a player who at one time was of interest to the Vancouver Canucks. You go back a couple of seasons, and that was a name that was being bandied about in JT Miller trade discussions, you'll remember, before they had JT locked up, signed to the long-term deal. We asked the poll question on Friday, would you overpay to add a top 4 defenseman right now? And 50% of you said yes. What's an overpay for Byram right now, given where he's slotted, given that he's had a decent career, but for a guy who was, the 4th pick in the draft, I'm not sure he has launched to the point where you can, say he has realized that sort of potential.
He's cheaper than Rasmus Anderson.
He's had some concussion issues. It's 78 points in 176 games. So really, Blake, he's played just a little more than 2 full seasons and is in the vicinity of a 30 to 35 point defenseman, prorated, right? He is a lefty who can play the right side. 6'1", 205, so decent size, but not a behemoth. Mobile, puck transporter. What's an overpay for Bowen Byram right now? Is a first-round pick an overpay? Or is that just about what you think he would go for? He's making what, 3.5 in Buffalo, 3.8 in Buffalo with restricted free agency pending, and he'll have arbitration rights as well. So these can be scary These can be scary extension talks for front offices. Look no further than Jeremy Swayman this past year with the Boston Bruins. But you tell me, what's an overpay for Byram?
I think a first-round pick is merely fair price.
Okay.
Because that's a 4th overall pick, and he's not a Quinn Hughes, but he's a certified National Hockey League top 4 defenseman.
All right.
So
you're peeling next year's first for Bowen Byram today if that deal's available.
Right, but I don't think it would be.
Okay. Would you peel a first and a future second?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. At this point, yeah, and a guy at that age that you got, that you can secure for a long, long time. Yeah.
I'm not sure he makes Tom Wielander redundant because Wielander is a natural righty, and Wielander, I think, is going to be one of your core penalty killers and stoppers, which I'm not sure is the profile of Byram. So if the Sabres said, we don't want the first-round pick, we want Wielander?
I was just going to ask you the same thing. Like, if Tom Wielander turned into Bowen Byram effectively, would you be ecstatic? I think you'd be pretty ecstatic.
I'm not sure I'd say ecstatic. I think I'd be happy. Again,
Byram will exceed.
We're not talking about a guy who,
No, I know, but he's still young too.
He's closer to a 4 than he is to a top pair guy. Right?
I still think Bowen Byram will be a 45-point defenseman.
Okay.
In the right
and
time.
That explains a lot of it, Blake. So you would move Wielander for Byram. Wielander in a second for Byram.
It would be with
do
the
one
biggest lump in my throat ever, but I would lose sleep over that trade for sure.
And Blake, honestly, when we sit here and talk trade negotiations and potential trades, which we do from time to time, that should be the case.
Yeah.
If you're losing sleep about a trade, that's because you understand you need to give up something significant to return something significant. Look no further than the Philip Roenick trade, right, everyone? We had a lot of people sweating bullets on that one. What are the Canucks doing? I can't believe what they're doing. And look, at the time, it was a little unusual for a team that was so far out of the playoffs to make that kind of ad and peel a first-round pick. But, of course, they were taking a longer-term view, and they looked at it in terms of, we have watched a bunch of right-shot top 4 defensemen pass us by on the trade market, on the free agent market. We've drafted one, or had they even drafted Wielander at that point? I'm not even sure they had drafted Wielander at that point. We're going to have to draft them. We know those guys are going to take a while. At some point, you have to pull the trigger on that profile of player. And so if we're talking about a Byram deal between now and March, and I suspect we will, he's a Cranbrook kid and a former Vancouver Giant. So there's a lot of familiarity with this player in the province. I would suspect that you're going to have to consider some returns to the Buffalo Sabres that make you a little bit uncomfortable, that make you squirm a little. Because it's that kind of trade.
The calculus you have to make, and I do always have the echo of Frank Saravalli in my head of saying, you don't want to be competitive for a couple of years. You want to be perennially competitive.
Tom Dundon rule.
Yeah.
Get to the playoffs every year with a competitive team, knock the door. One of these years, the door will come.
You got a lottery ticket every single year, though. Not for the draft. I mean, to win the cup. But I don't think you're foregoing that. You're not getting a 28-year, 29-year-old defenseman in Bowen Byram. Folks, we're putting cart before horse here a little bit. But if we're spitballing trades, that would be a player I could get behind if I'm Patrick Allvin, because he's 23. And he's not only for this window, but he's your next one potentially as well. I mean, you sign him to a 7-year deal, 8-year deal, he's this window and the next one comfortably. I mean, honestly, you'd have him until 32. It'd be the perfect timeout for a contract if you wanted to sign him to an 8-year deal.
And that begs the question, how much you pay him? And that's where, look, if the Vancouver Canucks really liked the player and even liked what it was going to cost them via a trade, there is a third hurdle to get over with Bowen Byram, and that is, what is it going to take to re-sign him, and are you comfortable with the price point? So it is a very complex situation if you get into Bowen Byram trade negotiations. It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to go there. The one thing that is already clear about Alvin this year, and you see this in the way that they're manipulating guys like Arshdeep Bains and Eric Brandstrom, and I suspect Aatu Räty may have some of this treatment, sending them up and down, accruing the cap space, every dollar counting. Sitting there right now with about $5 million showing for the trade deadline if need be. It's going to change between now and then, but for the moment, they could add a $5 million player at the trade deadline. So they have learned the Jake Gensel lesson from last year. Remember last year they were so desperate to add Jake Gensel and just couldn't make it work cap-wise. So don't for a second discount those sorts of calculations that have to go into a Bowen Byram trade. Not just do we like the player, are we willing to give up what Buffalo wants, but then thirdly, what's he going to cost us going forward? Because that's a huge part of this puzzle. Trent Frederic is available in Boston. Are you interested there? Because I bring the name up because Dreger had talked to us about, has twice now mentioned third-line center as being a target for the Vancouver Canucks. And, well, this guy sort of fits the bill there.
Terrible start to the season for Trent Frederic, but if you get last year's Trent Frederic, you love it. 18 goals, 40 points, and he played all 82 games and 13 in the playoffs. Last year was his Mona Lisa. Can he replicate it? Because that was a 9-point surge from the year before, which was already a pretty good year, 17 points, but only 17 goals, 31 points. Is it repeatable? He's 26 years of age. Like, that might be about as good as it gets.
He played 1345 last year, and he's playing more this year with less production, just the 3 points, or 4 points.
It's not as good a team, obviously, the Bruins.
Needless to say.
He's gone from a +9 last year to a -8 already this year.
Mm-hmm. What you like about him, this is a digestible player at $2.3 million, heading towards unrestricted free agency. And he's a 6'3", 390-pounder as well. Now, sadly, a left shot center, but
yeah,
this is a player that look, you're doing pretty well right now, Vancouver, as it is, with Bluger holding down a third line center spot, with Suter going there if you need him there, and we'll see what Räty can do. And it may well be that some team just so needs a third line center right now that Trent Frederic is off the board a lot sooner.
If he was a right
than
shot,
the Vancouver Canucks need for a center.
If he was a right shot, I'm pretty intrigued. As a left shot, not the droid I'm looking for from the Canucks.
Not the droid he's looking for. What droid are you looking for?
I'm not looking. I'm not desperate on the third line center thing right now.
I'm not either.
If I'm the Canucks, I'm just seeing how all this pans out with Suter and Räty, and we're just going to buy some time here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games home and away. We will be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. It is just steps from the arena and stadium. You can check out the great street food menu they got there, the incredible arcade, some might call it bitchin', that surrounds the bar. Weekly drink specials, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar, the place to be. Greta, let the games begin. We'll talk to John Shannon here, our Tuesday regular, on Lankinen, on DeBrusk, on a number of Canucks topics. And then Farhan Lalji is going to join us. We talk Canucks with Farhan, but also wanted to get him involved today because want to know the fallout from this British Columbia Lions season that ends with such a whimper. A playoff loss to Saskatchewan, and what might happen there.
And is it just a fait accompli that it's
Nathan
O'Rourke?
Yep. And, of course, what could you get back in terms of a Vernon Adams trade? Will Rick Campbell and Neil McAvoy be the gentlemen who are making this decision? What happens if G. Roy Simon is available and doesn't get the Edmonton Elks job? What happens if your number one talent, Bird Dog Ryan Rigmaiden, gets the job in Edmonton? A lot of moving parts about to happen here with the BC Lions and across the CFL, most notably at the quarterback spot, where the Lions could go into the offseason with the potential to make a blockbuster trade. You don't see a lot of them in the Canadian Football League, but Vernon Adams is a starting quarterback. At his best, he's an MOP level quarterback. He would be an upgrade at quarterback for a number of teams, or he is as good as what a number of teams have, and he's younger with more upside, or at least more a longer career ahead of him. So a very, very interesting scenario is on the horizon and coming into focus for the BC Lions. Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Staunch Sekeres Price supporter, as are we with them. What you got here?
I'm looking at tonight, and I'm going to go on the assumption that they can score some goals versus the Anaheim Ducks. I'm going to go on the assumption that this is the day that they hit the over. It's unfortunately a 6 over, so they need to get to 7 for a payout. But I think they can do this tonight. 5-2, it's on the board.
Okay. I need a win. I have been downright awful here for 3 or 4 days in a row.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't say last night. Had the Lions on the weekend. I tried to get fancy with a couple NHL underdogs late last week. So I have
I had my Devils one last night, by the way. Mm-hmm. Devils beat the Oilers. I had that one -2.
Your Devils?
Well, last night they were my Devils.
Your Devils.
-1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have canvas far and wide here. And we got a friend here at the Wall Center, Casper, who I talk with every time we cross in the halls. And he says to me, Matty, I am pounding the Quinn Hughes shots on goal over. He goes,
it's true, he's pretty
game,
active.
Every game. He goes, you can tell he's got purpose. He wants to shoot the puck. 20 goals, right? Is the aim for Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes over under shots on goal 3.5, going over pace at +132. Come on, captain, my captain. I need you to put some rubber on the
Seems
Anaheim
pretty
goal
reasonable
tonight.
Seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Has to be on goal, not attempts.
No, not attempts. On goal. On goal. I know we sometimes talk about attempts, but on goal. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION. New code there, NATION, when opening that account. John Shannon coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing, new locations opening. You got to get more customers, keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all these things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to square.ca and see why Square is big in restaurants. We welcome in the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, Mr. John Shannon. How are you?
Well, I'm finally over the Lions' defeat. So. Jeez. What happened?
I don't know.
What happened for most of the season, really?
No, honestly, like what happened from August onward? It was
basically what happened since Nathan Rourke came back. Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I know. It was very disappointing when they signed Rourke. There were Grey Cup, not just aspirations, but expectations in this town with a home Grey Cup, and it
there
didn't
were
come to
expectations like that in Mississauga. So.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. We're still hanging on to the Whitecaps. We got them Friday at LAFC, and what could be a big upset and really get this market jazzed up about Whitecaps soccer. It is always jazzed up about Canucks hockey, but we were wondering about tonight, John, on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What's going to have more of people's attention? The Canucks Ducks, or really any hockey game, or that little election going on down south? Not a great day to be a TV programmer in the sports world, I'm going to guess.
It's funny. I had somebody from New York text me and say, "Can you believe the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins are actually playing on election night?" So I think there's a lot of people thinking exactly the way you're thinking, Matt. And there was a time. There was a time in our lifetime when elections would have been over by the time the Canucks face off in California. Now
that's right.
Yes. Now that's just not the case. And I am not being political. I am not being political because I don't need the harassment on social media. But yes, it is a difficult night to think that people will be concerned about what's going on at Honda Center versus what's going on in Washington, D.C.
Why 11 games? Why wouldn't they earmark that to have a quiet night at the very least, if at all?
Well, because there are specific nights of the week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, are really regional nights and not national nights. Monday night is now Prime Monday in our country. Wednesday night is Rogers and TNT. And Saturdays and Sundays are national nights in both countries as well. So you have little or no option. Now, that said, if you're an American and you vote, maybe you should just go to the hockey game and enjoy and escape from reality for a couple of hours and enjoy it. But yes. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and it's fair to mention that even before cord cutting became a thing, John, typically U.S. presidential elections did bite in to the sports consumerism. Even in the National Football League, you will see ratings around a U.S. presidential election take a dip because people are spending their time elsewhere, historically.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you followed up with it yesterday, but Fox announced their revenues yesterday, and they were more than $3 billion. A lot of it because of political campaign dollars and advertising that went around their national sports coverage of the soccer in the summertime, the National Football League, and obviously the World Series.
So thanks, I guess.
It's good. It may steal from your audience, but it's filling your coffer. The sales guys are happy.
As I told you last week, I'm a cup half full guy.
That's right. That's right. Canucks 5-2-3, John, at the 10-game mark. Points in 8 of 10, third in the Pacific by either standings points or points percentage now after LA's victory last night. How are you feeling about their start?
I'm okay with it. When you consider that the contributions from certain people have not been there, Thatcher Demko hasn't been in goal. They are above 500. They are in the playoffs, even though I can't believe I'm talking about playoffs the first week in November. I'm fine with it. This team is a very good hockey team. The changes they had to make at forward and the blue line, it wasn't going to happen in the first 5 games of the season. I mean, look what's happening in Nashville with the changes they made. It takes a longer time for chemistry to be created in these pressure-packed situations. I'm fine with it. And by the way, you better give Patrick Allvin a little bit of credit here. Is the Kevin Lankinen not the best signing of any free agent 2 weeks before the season started? I mean, it's an amazing. When you think about it, and you think about other teams struggling with goaltending, Lankinen signing is a remarkable feat of genius from the general manager, I think.
It's also a profound failure for a lot of other scouting departments who might have known already at that point or been able to project some goaltending foibles for their team. Wouldn't every one of those teams, like, or maybe a third of the league, say for $866K a year, whatever it is, like, we'll sign Kevin Lankinen. Like, isn't that just a great insurance policy for any team? And I guess, Kevin has to be a party to it. He gets to choose where he wants to go. But I would think a lot of teams would have been in on that contract for that player.
What do you think his next contract next summer is, Blake?
More than this, yes.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. So Demko comes back. I would assume that, Shelovs goes back to Abbotsford when that occurs, because Shelovs can still go back to Abbotsford, right? So, so Lankinen has secured himself a pretty good spot, I think, for this season, and deserves some credit for not panicking and signing in Europe late in the summertime, or, and just being patient to be at the right place at the right time. It really is, when you think about it, and this is not a knock at Shelovs, because we all know what he did in the playoffs for this hockey club. But man, oh man, I would shudder to think where they'd be without Lankinen at this point.
At 5-2-3, they are a shadow of their start of a year ago in terms of their stats. Not in points, though. They're only a few points off of where they were last year. But their goals for are less. Their goals against are more. Basically, in every category, they've gotten worse year over year, and yet they are still where they are at 5-2-3. Which, if they didn't make a ton of changes, you'd say, well, they're going to regress to the mean in a good way and get back to the 109-point kind of team that they were a year ago. But there were enough changes that I think at 5-2-3, there's enough reason to say, okay, are they going to regress back to the 109-point kind of team, or is this the new them based on all the changes?
Well, I still think they're a 100-point team. So I'm 109. I'm not worried if it's 103 versus 109. I mean, I still think they're a 100-point team. I think it appears that a guy like Jake DeBrusk is finally settling in. Dakota Joshua is coming back sooner than later. So all of a sudden, I think, it's like a pretty good stock on the market. The arrow's pointing up, and so I'm comfortable with where they are right now. I just think that things are working fine. Rick Tocchet is trying to push more buttons to create more awareness earlier in a game. I think that's fair too. I think this is the year that probably will be as frustrating as any for Rick, because after taking over the club and thinking he learned the roster and learned the personality of the players, he was able to push the right buttons appropriately last season. So this year was going to be the comfort year. Okay, we're pointed in the right direction. We're going to be better than we were last year. Well, you know what? When you make a few changes, that's just not the case. And so this will try more on Tocchet than it will on, and obviously it'll always try on the fans, than it will on the players. And to me, that's part of the process. And it's an awful word and it's an overused word, but it is part of the process of what goes on in those first 2.5 to 3 seasons that you run a hockey club.
This is by no means exhaustive, fellas. I've just taken a quick scan, and let's face it, we're only 10 to 13 games in for a number of teams, so a long, long way to go. But can you make the case that Kevin Lankinen is the best free agent signing, period, right now?
He's impacting a lot of points.
I think that's what I was trying to do, but yes. So.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, I was wondering if you guys were talking about goaltenders or writ large. Montour's been very good for Seattle. He's put up some points. I know people hate the term and the money, but I remember texting our friend Ian Furness saying Montour and Stevenson make Seattle better in the here and now, even if you don't like how the contracts are going to age. I've heard that Sean Walker's doing good things down in Carolina. Of course, they lost Shea and Pesci, so that became they needed a backfill. But yeah, I think you can look at Lankinen and say through the month of October, nobody got more out of a free agent than the Vancouver Canucks did. You mentioned DeBrusk. Where are you at on DeBrusk? Because he's a notoriously slow starter, John. He did get his first goal on Saturday. Lo and behold, it comes a year to the day from his first goal last year, which happened on November 2nd as well. But where are you on DeBrusk, and when would concern seep in if he's not scoring?
Well, we all know Jake's a little streaky when it comes to scoring goals. Let's face it. And so you can only hope that flicker on Saturday night ignites something and give him a chance to play in a top six position. I think we'll see a little bit more out of Jake every night out now. I mean, they've been really patient with Jake, as they should be, and I think fans should be too. I don't see the Jake DeBrusk signing right now as a disappointment. I just think it's a work in progress. And again, it goes back to that word of patience. Be patient. I mean, you're right. It's the first month of the season. We're not even 30 days into the regular season, guys. Let's just be patient a little bit with some of these signings.
Do you, I know he was meant for Pettersson, but do you prefer him with Miller and Besser?
I prefer anybody with Miller. I just love JT Miller, and as you guys know, for the amount of time we have been doing this, I have been a huge proponent of JT Miller all along. I just think that anybody that plays with JT Miller is going to be better. Anybody he's going to make them better. He's going to will them to be better. So I have no issue with DeBrusk there. It's. Those three guys together could be fun to watch if they create that quality chemistry, and they're allowed to stay together for a while. Not to change the topic, but I think it dovetails. One of the reasons I think the Winnipeg Jets are playing as well as they are is that Scott Arniel has not really had to change the lines very often. In fact, he's only juggled lines in one game this season. So that Kyle Connor's playing with Mark Scheifele, and that Nick Ehlers is playing with Nemestikov and Ehlers. Velarde's on that line with Connor and Scheifele. So that's a huge relief for the players, and it creates more opportunities for chemistry. Not that I'm an NHL coach, but my advice is if you want Jake DeBrusk and you want him to play with Miller and with Besser, just leave him there. Give them 3 weeks. Get them to find a way to enjoy each other and understand each other on the ice, and I think you'll probably be in a better shape.
The Jets have scored twice as many goals as the Vancouver Canucks already. Yeah. It's just crazy. It's a weird start to the season. There's a lot of teams that I thought were going to be putrid that are doing fine, like the Flames and the Blue Jackets. There's a lot of elite teams that are not doing fine, like the Colorado Avalanche. And a lot of teams that we thought were going to be decent that are not doing fine as well. If you're on one of those teams that's overachieving, your players are probably at an all-time high in terms of stock to trade. If you're one of the teams that's underachieving, you could be patient. You could be desperate. Do we see the market open up earlier rather than later because of the performance of some of these teams? Like, Seattle doesn't want to be a losing team again. Do they want to make a deal? Colorado and Nashville, to name a couple more. What do you think of the market? Because it really didn't open up until the new year last year outside of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, I want to know what's going on. Jimmy and Patrick had probably made 7 trades by now, hadn't they?
This is very slow for them. Yes,
yeah. I think they made 50% of the trades in the year in the regular season last year. Here's the fascination: is a year ago I think we had 10 or 12 elite teams in the National Hockey League. I think we only have 6, and what's happened now is teams like Boston, teams like Colorado, even teams like Toronto have migrated back to the middle. I don't know why yet, and probably because they thought that their teams would get off to obviously better starts, but something is amiss in a few of those places. Colorado, it's pretty simple. I think you pointed goaltending. They've been injured. They've had some major injuries. I think you can be patient. I think the one caveat would be Nashville. What is going on there? But here's the other thing. If the Nashville Predators played in Ottawa, the amount of pressure that Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett would be under would be extreme. The fact that they're in Nashville and the hockey community is in love with their Predators, there's not near the pressure. There's not near. They too can be patient, And that's the difference between playing in a really hockey hotbed market or in Canada or playing in a town like Nashville that is in love with its hockey club.
Yeah, it's also the constitution of the manager as well, right? Like some managers are willing to ignore the noise and just sit there and stick to their plan and block out all the pressure and the noise. Others are affected by it. I would argue the longer you stay in a Canadian market, the more it's likely to chip away at you, particularly as you look at your shop.
The longer you stay in the Canadian market, the quicker you want to get out.
For some.
Sure.
Until you win. And then you want to be
Conor Garland took this honor and said, like, I love playing here. It matters. It's meaningful. You go out in the community. People are talking hockey with you. So I'd like to think that is a more engaging, energetic environment.
John, let me ask you this. Did you expect this out of the Minnesota Wild? One loss?
No.
For them right now?
I didn't. But they're getting great goaltending. Remember a lot of their guys last year that they invested a lot of money in, the Hartmans and the Boldies did not have great seasons after signing their long-term deals. They have turned it around. Kirill Kaprizov is a genuine superstar in this league that because where he plays doesn't get near the attention that he should. Faber is, he's unbelievable as a defenseman. Spurgeon, when he's healthy, is a quality player, but to me, it all goes back to goaltending. And between Fleury and Gustafsson, they've gotten enough good goaltending in order to be in this spot.
And watch out for them next year. They get
right.
effectively $13 million in cap space opened up to them for free with the expiration of the big numbers for the Parise and Suter buyouts. Like the Wild could be a wagon as soon as next season.
Well, as long as Billy Guerin doesn't go and spend it silly.
Yes.
Right.
And that's a real challenge. But I think Bill Guerin, who, by the way, trained with Jim Rutherford for a while, I think he's a smart enough guy to understand what he can do and what he's had to do. They do need to find another goaltender next year, perhaps Kevin Lankinen. Who knows? So from that perspective, but Billy's going to have to spend the money wisely at a certain point, as opposed to just think he's got bushels of dollars to spend.
Marvelous stuff, sir. You were free to go watch those exit polls, John, and maybe sneak in some hockey later tonight.
Well, that's the magic of having a few more screens than one.
Mm-hmm. You're a multi-screen guy, are you?
Oh, I have to be now. Actually, here's the other thing that I'm now. I'm a multi-audio guy now.
Multi-audio?
So I have two games on, or tonight I will have the election on sound-wise and a game. So I know my wife thinks I'm crazy. So.
Multi-audio. So you got what, one earbud on one thing and one on another, or?
No, I have three speaker systems that I can have
just turned up in the room.
I have three things turned on in the room all the time.
So they're all fighting each other. Yeah. It's cacophony of noise.
Yeah, which is the world of a control room that I lived in for a long, long time.
Ah, okay.
It's comfort food for him.
I guess so. Yeah, like that white spot chicken pot pie.
I'm sitting there with all my friends alone.
You do you, John Shannon.
Yeah, that's it.
And we'll catch you up next Tuesday.
Cheers, boys.
Not weird at all.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center.
And it is that time of the year where you want to feel comfortable. You want to feel cozy. You want to eat something that makes you feel like your fireside, warm, dry. The culinary team at White Spot knows all of this. That's why they've come up with the comfort menu. It is literally wool blankets and fireside chats wrapped up in a menu, if you can possibly do that. We're talking about mini Yorkies. We're talking about pot roast, chicken pot pie, braised beef burgers. I've even heard rumors of carrot cake. What's not to like there? Go sample the comfort menu for yourself. Take the whole family and visit your local White Spot today.
TSN's West Coast Bureau Chief Farhan Lalji.
Wow, I'm going to White Spot right now. You know, the chicken, broccoli, and cheddar on rice is part of that comfort menu. It's so good, man. Like, you've got to go and try that dish alone. You won't go back.
All right. Broccoli, it's a superfood. Do they have White Spot on the Linden side of the... Okay.
We're close.
Do they have a White Spot on the Linden side?
He got Nexus just to visit White Spot.
I was going to say, I hope you're making your way to this side of the line to get your White Spot fixed.
Daily. Daily.
On to more morose matters now.
Yes.
Sit here and talk White Spot all day. What do you think of the Canucks after 10?
Dude, last. You know what? They haven't been up to form, right? And at the end of the day, when you look at how Pettersson's playing, and when you look at how Jake DeBrusk and the lack of offense there, and just the way they're giving up chances off the rush, you've got to be concerned. But then when you look at their record with 13 points in 10 games, you've got to just look at the ceiling, don't you? Right? Like, I mean, you look at where they're at now, and I don't know that their form is going to get much worse. I do believe it's only going to get better from here. And once that happens, I think this team's going to operate at a pretty high level. So the results are good, and they're only going to get better from here.
That is the debate right now. Is this the bottom end? Is this the scuffle? Is this them playing at their worst and getting away with it? And if that's the case, then totally fine. But they just need to prove that is the case and show us what good-looking hockey looks like maybe over these next 10 games, right?
Well, you're right. And, Kevin Lankinen, I think, is kind of the undersold story here, right? Because I think he's also cleaning up a lot of this. And we were used to seeing that when Thatcher Demko was at the peak of his powers before Rick Tocchet arrived, right? So that's my – how sustainable is what we're seeing from Lankinen, because they need him at this level. And if he's not at this level, they better turn before the results catch up to them, because if he's not at this level, the results are going to catch up if they don't tweak things here.
Where are you on Pettersson? What do you think's amiss there, Farhan?
I think that, I asked this to Rick Tocchet before, and I had some people kind of roll their eyes at the question. I think he's forgotten how to dominate. And I think that that's a real thing for a player that is as fragile confidence-wise as this guy, because he doesn't want the puck on his stick often. And I don't see him very often trying to beat players, dynamic things that we're used to seeing from him before. So for me, it's not just the goal scoring, it's the process. It's what I'm seeing to the eye test when the puck is in his hands. It's the lack of shot attempts on the power play. Don't tell me teams are taking it away, because they don't respect it anymore. And he's just not attempting it. So it's just him not attempting to play the game as certain. That's what is glaring to me, and it just makes me wonder, like, how long it'll take for him to get it back, because a couple of goals, like if he scores 2 goals in 3 games, I don't know that that's enough to completely flip the switch in terms of his process. So I just want to see him try to beat people. I just want to see him try, because I haven't seen that yet. It's not just the results, it's the process.
Do you like Garland and
Joshua?
No.
What, did you get Wally lessons right there? No.
Suter.
So, yeah, sorry. Do you like Garland and Suter with him? Like, is that quality enough winger for you? Do you want to see DeBrusk back there?
Well, number one, I think Garland is outstanding. Like, he is the best Canuck forward right now. He's the best Canuck not named Quinn Hughes. Like, full stop. And they need a driver on Pettersson's line, because Pettersson's not the driver. And Pius Suter, last year, chances went to die. So even though he got all that run with JT Miller and Brock Besser, offensively, he couldn't keep up. Defensively, he was a really good piece for that line. Now I'm seeing him finish and doing a little more offensively. So, I think he's fine. Eventually, I think they're going to find a way to get Joshua and Garland together. And if that's be Pettersson's wingers, that's great too. But I don't know that you can ask for a player better than Conor Garland right now if you're Elias Pettersson.
Do you think that they are likely to make a move anytime soon like they did last year in the first 8 weeks of the season, or do you think they're going to be more patient than that?
I think they're going to be a little more patient, but not. I don't know that this gets to Christmas without an improvement on the back end, because that's where they need it the most, as I see it. So, the one thing with Rutherford and Alvin is that they've been aggressive and they haven't waited until the deadline to do their business. And I think they'll continue that. The move they made at the start of the season, on the back end, where they cap flexibility, I think is something they're going to want to take advantage of. I know they're accruing cap space when they send guys down and move guys up and doing all of that, but you take full advantage of that at the deadline. I just don't think they're going to wait that long.
How does Bowen Byram strike you? Dregs told us yesterday that he thinks there are teams calling already from the Western Conference on Bowen Byram in Buffalo. Ex-Giant, how does he strike you?
Oh, he'd fit in great with this team, right? I mean, I do believe he's a legitimate top four. I can't get past what I saw from Bowen Byram his first 2 seasons, and the chance to come back here and play where he had a lot of success in junior, I think would only bring out the best.
Yeah, you don't think that he would effectively...
It's a bigger trade.
Like,
you're willing to give up a plum...
You eventually got to pay him too. So, how many $7 million plus defensemen do you want?
You think $7 million?
Yeah, he has a good year.
Yeah, look, and that's the challenge, right? Because they've got other contracts, and one of them that is kind of the elephant in the room is Thatcher Demko, right? And if it's me, given the injury history, I would run kicking and screaming from that, right? And if you can, you just can't risk that. You can't risk that level of salaries. Enter into their thinking in terms of where they're going to spend some money. Obviously, Brock Besser is going to be a big decision, and Brock Besser continues to play at a level that makes last year's not an anomaly. I think they need to find a way to get Brock Besser done, and so then after that, where do you go? And I wasn't sure that what they gave Roenick was number. So yeah, I mean, look, it's a fair question. I don't know what they're going to wind up prioritizing, but I do think if they don't go big on Demko, it might open a few things up for them a little bit later.
What about? Let me ask you this: with the way Lankinen is playing, does Demko's return even matter right now? I think you can get much better at that position right now.
Well, look, when Demko's on, he's one of the best goaltenders in the world. And right now, we're still at the stage with Lankinen where we're seeing a run, right? I mean, look, 12 years ago, played 6 really good games. And we thought, oh, well, maybe they've got an answer here. Maybe they've got a real 1B. And then all of a sudden, when Demko's not coming back, then you see the real deal here, right? So I would certainly like to see more from Lankinen before I'm ready to anoint him. He's playing well, but we just don't know.
Yeah. Aatu Raty, do you think he's here to stay? Farhan, he had the fantastic Young Stars camp preseason. He's been recalled here. He can take draws on the right-hand side, which the rest of the lefties can't. What do you think? Do you think Raty is here to stay?
Nope. And listen, for the reasons that you outlined, they need that center on the right-hand responsibility. I think he's ready for that part of his game to take the next step. And I think he needs to be here to show that next level of improvement, right? I mean, I'm not saying he's dominated the American Hockey League quite yet, but the areas in which he needed to improve, I think those steps need to be taken here now. But a big gamble by keeping Baines here and sending Oman down. They'd have to take another one like that at some point in order to keep Raty here. So I have my doubts that they're going to take that level of risk within the roster and, the flexibility to send him. But I agree with you. I think he should have been here from, weeks ago, because they do need that right side draw and a legitimate guy to play down the middle as opposed to a winger masquerading as a center.
Do you think Aatu Raty can play quarterback for the BC Lions?
I don't. But we know Nathan Rourke's going to.
What? Yeah, he was super confident about that yesterday. I'm glad I don't have to make these types of decisions, but I know I will be here, he said.
And he's right. He will be here, right? And I know that Neil McAvoy and commit to that, but for my money, they committed to that in August, right? That was the decision. When they brought Nathan Rourke back, paid him the contract that they paid him, that he was going to be the quarterback of the future. And I don't think that's the wrong decision. Look, I'm a big VA fan, and I think VA is going to have success in this league, and I would love nothing more than for him to win an MLS from now. But they made that decision in August, and he's younger, right? Like, he's 5 years younger. So I think that factors into all of these decisions as well. So, both of them have had interception issues. Both of them have shown greatness. Both of them can run with the football. There's a lot to like in both their games. They're both character lead. And there's a market for VA. I think there's a robust market for VA. And quite honestly, when you look at the Rourke contract, I think if you asked, 8 other general managers, in spite of what happened with Nathan Rourke today, the 2022 version is not that far. So if you would have asked them, take the contracts off the table, who would you take? I still think more people probably believe that Rourke still has that ceiling and the longevity, but you can't take the contract off the table. So I think there'd be a more robust market for VA than there will for Nathan Rourke, simply because that contract is movable. And I think at some point he's going to get moved.
Why wasn't Rourke the same? Can you break it down?
God, not in the amount of time you're going to give me on this show. I just think there were a lot of layers.
You got lots of time. Go ahead.
A lot of layers. I was just on the phone with Lapo, and we were just talking about it. And I'm like, you need to go back to why this team fell apart. And I think it can work into the locker room after the SAS game, right? And I think everything was happy peppy, and then it became, it became unsettled. And now he's bouncing around the NFL for a couple of weeks, and now VA is unsettled. And then he comes back and he's rushed into the lineup, and now Nathan is unsettled because he did make an emotional decision to come back. And and then the room is unsettled. And I think all of that added to this. I don't think Nathan Rourke was horrific in his games. I think we grade Nathan Rourke on a curve. He didn't meet that curve, and he was okay, right? He had some moments of great, and he had some moments of struggle, and he had some moments of average. And I think he's going to be a really good quarterback again. As quickly as he did, and I think being away from CFL football for 2 years has to factor into that. I saw him double clutch more than I ever saw him do in 2022. But I think he's going to be really good again. So there's a lot of reasons for it, many between the ears of more than just one player. So to watch, wasn't it, when we saw a player that great? Because when we see guys like, you saw it, you covered it closely in 16, Matt, with Jonathan Jennings, right? And I remember when Jennings had that great season, and I would talk to defensive coordinators, and they're like, we're good. We've seen the tape on him. We know what he does well and what he does poorly. You know what? They were right. When I talked to defensive coordinators about Nathan Rourke 2022, they were in awe. And the number of people that just threw everything they could at him and nothing worked. Like, he played a sustainable game, and I think he'll get it back.
Yeah. Good comparison, because everybody remembers John Jennings. He was going to be the next one for the Lions, and it just evaporated.
I took the bait on Jennings, too. I was huge on Jonathan. I was huge on Jonathan Jennings. I can remember being at the game in Calgary, an incredible overtime game in Calgary, where he threw a pick late, and somebody mentioned to me, I'm not sure he's going to be the guy. And I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? Like, he can shoot the lights out. He can run. He can throw. On Adams, we don't see many blockbuster trades in the Canadian Football League. I think this has the chance to be one, but I think it's incumbent on the Lions whipping up a market in a bidding war between at least a couple of teams, and I think there's a potential for it to be more than just 2 teams. But he's on the books for $500K in each of the next 2 years, which is a pretty healthy salary. What do you think he could return?
Well, it depends on the level of market. And I do think that the quarterback talent pool will be significantly better than it was a year ago, right? Bo Levi Mitchell has resurrected his career. Davis Alexander is going to be a star in this league. Jeremiah Masoli is healthy. Trevor Harris has had a really good year. Like, you go on and on down the league. And last year we were talking about maybe Matthew Shills as being the amongst 9 teams. Now I think there's going to be like 15 quarterbacks that teams have an interest in. So it might level the market a little bit. So if they could get Hamilton to commit to getting into the pool, if Saskatchewan all of a sudden says, Trevor, you were great, but you're going to be 39. We got to get younger, along with Edmonton and Calgary. But I could also see this just being moved for a first-round pick. right? Like you would love to see a scenario where you could get a first-round pick and a starting caliber offensive lineman or a starting caliber defensive lineman or something like that. Like you'd love to see two meaningful pieces come back, but it becomes difficult in this league because it's a small league and everyone knows when you need to. Knows BC can't carry both of those quarterbacks next year, so I'm curious to see, and we'll know more in the next week or so when Edmonton makes its GM and coach decision, and when we see how Hamilton figures itself out. So we'll know more, but it only takes two, right?
Yeah. Well, on that file, will Rick Campbell and Neil McAvoy be the guys trading Vernon Adams? Are they both going to be back in their current co-GM?
I believe so. I think that decision will probably. I think whatever they decide to do will happen very quickly because they're not going to want this to bleed into Grey Cup week. It could happen today. It could happen as early as by Thursday, I would imagine. And I think the fact that both men have a year left on their.
You're talking about like a vote of confidence by Thursday? You're talking like a vote of confidence by Thursday or what?
On which way they go, whether they're going to let everybody go, let one of them go, or keep them. I think in the end they'll keep them. Both guys have a year left on their deals. So, and I think there's a bigger question at head coach than there is at GM and the personnel side. But you can make a case for both. And you know me, I'm not going to advocate for one or the other. But I just think that part of it will allow them to have a year of patience.
So let me ask this. As you've reported, Ryan Rigmaiden, who's really the Lions' primary, he's their director of U.S. scouting, but he's really their primary player 100%. Procurement guy. Most of the players that come here come via Ryan. The last time he left BC, he went to Winnipeg and helped build the team that we're watching go to, all these Grey Cup games. If he were to become the guy in Edmonton, if they hire him, so what would the Lions do at that position, and would that be the repatriation of G. Roy Simon?
Yes.
To fill that role?
I think if that happened, that would be the most logical move from there to bring G. Roy back to BC as the number two. I'm not convinced that's going to happen. And look, I think Edmonton would be really wise to take a good because when it comes to personnel, evaluation, connections in the U.S., like all of it, they don't come much better. But my gut tells me, even though they'll go through a complete process and talk to him, talk to Ted Govaya, maybe talk to Brendan Taman, along with Ed Hervey and G. Roy Simon, I do Simon or bringing Ed back. I think that's how it ends in Edmonton. One of those two will be the guy. So I think BC will be in a position to keep Ryan, and they'll be better for it because he's pretty good.
Is there any chance that Omar Doman is such a G. Roy Simon fan that G. Roy is here regardless of whether or not Rigmaiden makes the move? And just if Edmonton cuts him loose, do you think Omar's going to bring G. Roy back in some capacity?
Maybe, but there might be other options for G. Roy to do a little better, right? Because ultimately at this stage, when you've been a GM for half a season, you don't want to be a number three. In BC, he doesn't get above number two, right? Like that doesn't happen. So he would be the number three here. And whereas if Riggs went to Edmonton, then he's got a chance to kind of be that, chief player procurement guy that you talk about. So, if Edmonton loses, if Hamilton loses Ed Hervey, does an opportunity come up in people internally with the assistant GM title? You'd have to think they'd do that. But
Gotcha.
I think there might be better opportunities for G. Roy elsewhere than to come to BC as the three.
Gotcha. Last question, short answer. Who's playing here for the Grey Cup?
Toronto and Winnipeg. The opposite. I would love to see Montreal and Sask with Corey Mace coming back to BC to win a Grey Cup, but I think it's going to be Toronto and Winnipeg.
Okay. I will go the opposite. Give me the Riders and give me the Alouettes here. And if you're the Grey Cup organizing committee, you really want the Riders.
The Bombers will be insufferable if they get to
it's
another
be 5 straight Grey Cups if the Bombers
are already insufferable.
Then we have to deal with O'Shea and all the grumpiness and paranoia.
I think if you ask anybody outside of Toronto and Winnipeg, those would be the answers that you get.
Very good, my friend. Farhan, awesome stuff. Thank you for this, buddy. Look forward to your big media party next week. Grey Cup media. Have you RSVP'd yet?
I believe so.
He's got a fancy RSVP system. You have to log in to RSVP. This never used to be the case when I was running media parties.
I'm not coming.
People would just say, I'm coming, I'm not coming, or you...
It's.
I would track it on a piece of paper. Here are rough numbers.
Paper. It's more technological than computers these days.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Says one politician.
I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. The whole week. And if SAS comes, we will have so much.
Thanks, buddy.
Just find a way to make it to the Grey Cup here.
We're going to be at Radio Row a week from Friday. So please don't tell the Riders Band because they have interrupted me there before.
And you were better for it. So is the listening audience.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale. Sekeres and Price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All of it goes to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
This segment brought to you by Ben Moss Jewelers, where you have the helpful staff that can navigate you through your purchase. It's a proudly Canadian-owned and operated company with a history dating back more than a century. 5 locations here in BC, Willowbrook and Langley, Coquitlam Center. They got Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. Mine diamonds available with a payment plan to suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. So, kickoff time note for Friday with Vancouver Whitecaps FC at LA to face LAFC at BMO Stadium. We're 7:30 now.
I didn't see that. They rolled it back.
7:30. It was 8 o'clock. You can cheer on the Caps at Goodco Bars, the Granville location, a free playoff watch party. And if the Caps were to win, Blake, have you looked at the bracket?
It's opening up just a little bit.
They would face their Cascadia rivals, Seattle Sounders FC, in the West semifinal. Seattle toppled Houston in the 4-5 matchup in the bracket, winning 2 games straight, both times requiring penalties, including a penalty shootout that went 7-6. So
the keepers have really stolen the show in these penalty shootouts.
They have.
Like Dane St. Clair's performance was Carlos Coronel in the East.
Dane St. Clair from Minnesota, who faces LA Galaxy in the other semi. So 3 of the 4 semifinal spots in the MLS West have been spoken for. We await Vancouver and LAFC. National Football League. Let's take stock here for a second. Kansas City remains unbeaten after beating Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football, albeit that was a struggle for Patrick Mahomes and company.
A strange struggle, though, because he had it going on with DeAndre Hopkins, and even Travis Kelce had a big day, too. I don't know why it was as much of a struggle as it was, but
they went it in overtime. You could tell Baker Mayfield, when the Chiefs won the toss, he threw his head back.
No, I know. He knows it's done.
Yeah.
Should have gone for 2.
It's the Buffalo rule. Yeah, it's the... And Troy Aikman said that when they were kicking the extra point to tie it. Like, are you going to have a better chance to beat Kansas City in Kansas City than a 2-point conversion with, 20, 30 seconds left, whatever it was? I think I would have tried to take my knockout shot at the champ, the 2-time defending champ, right there, as opposed to worrying
50-50 on the coin flip rather than having agency to win the game with the 2 points.
Well, and I'm not even sure. I'm no mathematician. But is it even 50-50? Because you do actually have to go down and score. And you have to score a touchdown to end the game there. If you kick a field goal, you give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. So I would like to think that you're a less than 50-50 bet, even if you win the toss.
Right. And so at that, again, from the 2.
Exactly.
Man. Nobody does it, though. Nobody does that. The 2-pointer to win.
Well, you know who does it? Dan Campbell does it in Detroit. They go for 4th downs. And the Green Bay Packers figure that out on Sunday. So you've got Kansas City unbeaten. You have Detroit with 1 loss. Everybody else out there has at least 2 losses, and everybody out there has at least 2 victories after the events of this weekend. I realize you got Buffalo there at 7-2. You got Washington there at 7-2. Buffalo, of course, has been a very good team for a good number of years now. Washington is your new shooter there with Jaden Daniels, the fine rookie quarterback. But are we marching towards a Kansas City-Detroit Super Bowl? And are we looking at a league that has really 2 teams that are over and above the rest of the field?
Well, the AFC is
I don't want to go down this road because we did this with the Lions and Alouettes early in the season and things done changed, but that's sort of where you're at here after 2 months of the National Football League.
There's not a lot of drama in the AFC, is there? Kansas City, Houston, and Buffalo all have multi-game leads already in their division.
Right.
And the wild cards seem to be fairly obvious in Baltimore and L.A. Well, I guess Denver's got a chance too.
Yeah. Boy, there's some really bad teams in the AFC. You wonder if Burrow and the Bengals can get things going. That multi-game lead for Houston, too. To my mind's eye, it looks even bigger because you have Indianapolis as the chase team there at 4-5 that has benched the rookie quarterback and is hoping to squeak more out of Joe Flacco.
Yeah. And really, they should be 7-2. They should have beaten the Jets.
Oh, by all means. Yeah, a lot of terrible teams. I mean, New England, the Raiders, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland. Like, there are some awful teams in the AFC. As for this coming week, well, trade deadline this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
There are some interesting names that are making the rounds. Already, we've seen 3 trades the moment we're recording this. Za'Darius Smith, the pass rusher, goes to replace the injured Aiden Hutchinson in Detroit. Cleveland sends him to the Lions for a 5th-round pick and a pick swap. Dallas tries to address their receiver needs with Jonathan Mingo, who was the 2nd-round pick last year from the Carolina Panthers. They get Mingo in a 7th for a 4th-round pick, and Khalil Herbert, a running back who the Bears weren't using much, is off to Cincinnati for a 7th-round pick. I'm going to be interested to see if the Seahawks do anything, and I'm going to be interested to hear from John Schneider and Mike McDonald with regards to why they did something or why they didn't do anything. Because as we talked about yesterday, and failed to mention, the Seahawks are actually in last place now. They're 4-5.
Did you mention the Marshawn Lattimore trade?
Is it done?
Yeah. To the Commanders.
That's a very interesting piece. He is an exceptional corner.
But Adam Schefter also found it necessary to quell speculation of a DK Metcalf trade.
Oh, well.
He actually went out and said, despite the speculation, Seahawks will not be trading DK Metcalf by 4 p.m.
Wow. Okay.
I'm surprised by that, but like, what are the Seahawks trying to rebuild here? Like, what the hell's going on?
No, I don't.
If you're not, then
we have seen in the NFL. And look, the Saints trading Lattimore is a great example, because that represents a little bit of a teardown rebuild. That's an exceptional player. Like, when he's healthy, that is a lockdown CB1. Play the physical receivers, can play the fast receivers. He has got a toolkit, Lattimore.
So Lattimore in a 5th for a 3rd, 4th, and 6th. Like, that's not a huge bounty.
No, and you tend not to see huge bounties in the NFL trade deadline.
Yeah,
which is why more often than not, it's only been a recent phenomenon, Blake, where we've seen teams like sell off multiple pieces, like the equivalent of an NHL, NBA teardown
that
rebuild.
Lions trade. I mean, I think a lot of teams would have done that Lions trade, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know he's a little bit over the hill, but
he's still an effective player.
He's effective enough.
Yeah. So, look, trade deadline in the NFL has gotten a lot more fun than it used to be. It used to be a whole lot of nothing. Trade here or there. Now you see a lot more teams active and engaged, and we'll see it all shake down for tomorrow. But that's a nice pickup from the Commanders at a position of need. Poll question results from Monday. We asked you, do you want Dakota Joshua back with Conor Garland when he's ready to return? Yes won the day. Take a guess at what percentage voted yes?
78.
91.
Whoa!
Matthew says, let the bromance resume. 604 Adams says, my first thought was put him on the fourth line to work up, but I like the idea of him and Garland, familiarity and hit the road running. Al says, voted no because Garland should stay in the top six based on his play so far, so Al's not yet willing to put Joshua in the top six. Drew says, yes, Joshua, Petey, Garland, DeBrusk, Miller, Besser is a good top six, allows the Canucks to leave intact the Heinen, Bluger, Sherwood line, which has been pretty good, which we discussed yesterday. You know, do you have some chemistry considerations here with regards to lines you don't want to touch to accommodate Dakota Joshua on his return? Errors and omissions, we have a couple. I said Brian White, goal scorer, the third goal against LAFC on Sunday. They changed that to an own goal for LAFC, so it wound up being 2 own goals for the visitors. Thanks to Yerke for pointing that out. We poked the bear there. We wondered where Yerke was with his E's and O's, and sure enough, there was Yerke finding an E. And then you're self-reporting on Bowen Byram, career points.
I had said 24 points was his career high. He had 29 in that combo year of Avs and Sabres.
That's it. That's all. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate you connecting, spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Facebook, Insta, TikTok, and YouTube. We are live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.